Ladies and gentlemen, welcome tonight to another great webinar that we have here at Holy Redcliffe with the AIIA Queensland branch. It is wonderful to have His Excellency John Dieu Uwihanganye, the Rwandan High Commissioner to Australia and Singapore. Your Excellency, welcome. Tonight we'll have a wonderful contribution from him 30 years on from the atrocities of the Rwandan genocide, and obviously there'll be some confronting discussion, but there'll also be some very uplifting discussion as well about the future of this wonderful country. Can I indicate later on, we'll have Dr. Kira Ingram. I'll tell you about her in a minute, a bit later, but one of the great young scholars involved with the AIIA Queensland branch and nationally as well. Can I just acknowledge Faisal for organising and convincing His Excellency to come and join us, and we're very pleased about that. And can I also acknowledge Yasmina Yolic, who's the Director General of the Department of Justice and Attorney General, who's here tonight. If those of you who know Yasmina, and I know her very well, would know that she has been through a genocide herself, the Bosnian genocide as part of the Balkan Civil War, and so it is not just any country that it can affect essentially almost any, so all countries. Ladies and gentlemen, can I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet tonight, the Yagara and the Turrbal people, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Sovereignty never ceded. Tell you a little bit about His Excellency. His Excellency is the current High Commissioner of the Republic of Rwanda to Australia and Singapore, an engineer by profession. The High Commissioner obtained his Masters in Construction Project Management from Manchester University. Prior to that, he was the Minister of State in charge of Transport at the Ministry of Infrastructure for the Republic of Rwanda. So I always like to have a former transport and infrastructure myself. He oversaw the implementation of Rwanda's land, air and transport water policies and decisions. He is a construction business leader with experience in both operational research, academic, managerial and leadership roles in construction project businesses in developing countries. Before he was appointed Minister of State, he managed and led various construction projects and has held successive positions at leading construction companies in Rwanda, and there's so many of them that he did. He was also a part-time lecturer of an MBA for project management courses at various universities in Rwanda, and as a certified project manager of the Association of Project Management. His Excellency is also married with 2 young children. Your Excellency, please come up and you look. Yeah.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure. Thank you so much, Honorable Lucas and Graham and everyone who participated in organizing this talk. I mean, like I said, I think maybe because I've been a lecturer and a teacher, I did some teaching in the secondary school after I finished my secondary school, and then I taught in the university. So that's why I don't like to kind of go there and have speeches. It's kind of boring, right? But I say it's boring. Some people are going to say you should have not become then a politician. I'm not a politician. So thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here today, and I'm just going to talk about Rwanda. One thing that we talk about all the time, and we know when we're talking about Rwanda across, we're talking to people who don't know much about Rwanda, so we have to bring the whole story about this, and then you ask the questions. You're free to ask any type of questions on. And I wanted to start about. I had wanted to project it over there, but it was not possible. But it's a story. It's a news that came today. It's a list of the fastest growing economies in the whole world, as per IMF projection. All right. So on the top is Guyana. Guyana is going to grow 19.2%. That's because recently they have discovered oil. Right. So next is Mozambique. Mozambique, they are doing a big project there with tons of gas and so on. Total is there, so they're going to grow around 8%. Third, Rwanda. Rwanda is going to grow 7.2%. So next year, it's going to be the third fastest growing economy in the whole world. And this is not just next year, it's been consistent for the last 20 years. We all love growth, right? Politician talks about growth. And so, I mean, I've grown the economy 2%, 3%, 4%, so 7%. Every politician would want it, would need it. So growth is a good thing, but growth is an indication of many other things. Now, that country that is the third fastest growing economy in the whole world with no oil, few resources, just using the people. It's a country that was like this 30 years ago. So 30 years ago, Rwanda experienced one of the most violent and imaginable events in modern history. Just in 100 days, more than 1 million Tutsis were killed. Just in 100 days. So this genocide against the Tutsi has two particularities. One is that these are neighbors killing neighbors. I mean, with all other genocide we know, just usually people will come, the Nazis will come to kill Jews, or so another group will come to kill with the intent. The genocide because there's an intent to exterminate. But in Rwanda, it's not about someone who came outside. It's about a neighbor who came to kill a neighbor. And they just killed them 1 million in just 100 days. And the key question is, what brings to a neighbor killing a neighbor? I mean, there's just one thing to illustrate the horrible past Rwanda has gone through. There's a person who just wrote a book that is called My Mother Killed Me. It's in French. Ma mère m'a tué. My mother killed me. What he's trying to say is that during the genocide against the Tutsi, his mother was hunting him to kill him. It's his mother. So it's not, I mean, it's not even the father, because if it's a father, maybe these days people are going to say, maybe you're not my son. It's his mother who gave birth to him was killing him. You imagine a point whereby your own mother thinks you're in a different race, different ethnic, and then goes all the way to killing you. What happens? The Tutsis, the Hutus, the Twa, these are fabricated ethnic lines. Rwandans are the same. I see Rwandans here. If you look at all of us, you're not going to see differences. We are the same. Paul was asking me, we speak the same language, Kinyarwanda. We have the same culture. And over the years, the Hutu, Tutsi, Twa, it was not a race. It was socio-economic classes. So in Rwanda, wealth is owned by cow, owning a cow. Okay, so if you own cows and you live mostly by cattle, you are called a Tutsi. All right? If you live mostly by farming, you're called a Hutu. Or if you live mostly by hunting and pottery and so on, you're called a Twa. So these are socio-economic classes. And there were processes where you could move from one class to another. There are even words in Kinyarwanda that justify that. Like you move from Hutu to Tutsi. It's like you're becoming from middle class, from farming, and you start to own many cows, then you become a Tutsi. So Rwandans were all united around one king for so many years. There is no point in history of Rwanda, prehistory, before colonizers, where Rwandans had issue among the so-called Hutu, Tutsis, and Twa, because there was nothing. It's fictitious. But when the colonizers, the Belgians, came to Rwanda, what they did, they saw Rwandans united around one king with good governance. Even in slave trade, Rwandans have the few of African countries who did not sell their brothers and sisters like other countries did. But they saw these people united. They tried, and they saw the only way they can do is to divide them. And what they did was to start telling Rwandans, you know what? It's not just about socioeconomic classes. Hutus and Tutsis are different. Obviously, many Rwandans were living by agriculture. That means most of them farming were Hutus. They go to the Hutus and say, nah, you're not the same. You're not coming. In fact, you don't come from the same place. You're coming from Chad. They go to Tutsis, no, you're coming from Ethiopia. The Tutsis are taller, are thinner. The Hutus, and this is a Belgian saying, the taller, thinner, the Hutus are pretty much shorter and more coastal. But if you're now a scientific, I'm an engineer now, those ideas are pretty stupid because if the Tutsis are living by cow, looking after cattle, they're drinking milk, and their life is kind of nomadic, you're going to expect someone to have the same morphology as the other one, right? My son is tall already. Here, he's 8 years old. He's already in that time, right? But my son is living a good life. He's the son of an ambassador. I didn't have that thing, right? So me, when I grow up, every morning I have to go downhill and put a gel can on the head before I go to school. My son is not going to do that. He's not going to have the same authority like me. It's about the lifestyle. So, but then they come and they use that differences. They start to measure noses and so on. And what happens is, then they start to tell the so-called Hutus, the Tutsis have oppressed you. Because the king, remember, the king must be rich. He owns cars. Therefore, he's identified as a Tutsi. They say, well, they have oppressed you. They have ruled you. That's why you've never had a Hutu who ruled. All right? So then it's tough, consistent. And even after the so-called independence, which was fake in a way, the government that went in continued that. So you're putting hate in people, you're starting to separate them. That's what led to this abdominal. And then, so the point, we end up becoming hating each other. That's what led to genocide. But today, I don't want to talk just about the genocide. I want to talk about the Rwanda we have today. That fastest growing economy. How did we get there? Think about it again. 1 million people are killed. How many people do you think killed 1 million? If they're neighbors, in just 100 days. You have around, let's say, 1.2 million perpetrators. With the current justice system, I'm happy we have someone from the justice. It takes, 3 months to finish. How could you, it's important to provide justice to survivors. It's important to make sure you reconcile people. How are you going to provide the justices? How are you going to reconcile people? Because the people need to move up. After the genocide in 1995, there's a lot of write-ups, like people, researchers. I've tried to put, I'll share the presentation. I'll try to quote who say Rwanda is basically a failed state. The Hutus and Tutsis can no longer live together. Separate them. That's what people believe. But the leadership, led by the current president, Paul Kagame, believe, no, we are the same. We go back to history. We have to rebuild, we have to reconcile and provide justice. So how did we reconcile the people so that they're productive up to that level? How did we provide justices to the victims? Now, I've prepared a video. It is a video that tells you a bit about our reconciliation journey. It talks about how we went to our history and provided justice and then reconciliation. So it's a 10-minute video, so I'm sure you're gonna get some anecdotes.
This is Rwanda today, a country transformed over the past 30 years. This new Rwanda has been forged out of the ashes of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, an event that shocked the world. Our story offers a warning of what can happen when political leaders preach division and hatred triumphs over humanity. But it also tells us what can be achieved when a determined people fight together for unity and reconciliation. This new Rwanda has been forged out of the ashes of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, an event that shocked the world. Our story offers a warning of what can happen when political leaders preach division and hatred triumphs over humanity. But it also tells us what can be achieved when a determined people fight together. This is our journey, told by those who have traveled together as we have moved from despair to hope. For much of the world, Rwanda first existed in 1994. And yet, our story starts long before this. Before colonialism, Rwandans had a rich culture, one language, and the people were united around their own organic form of governance. This all changed when colonial powers chose to control Rwandans by ethnicity, creating division and conflict where none had existed previously. This division grew into hatred and violence, culminating in the genocide against the Tutsi, where over 1 million people were murdered in 100 days.
zamu zifite ubuhiri zifite imipanga mu isoko zibyina nta ukanda burende bahiga abatutsi mbese mu buryo bukomeye
maze kubona bikomeye abantu batwika abantu barya inka abantu batemagurana za bariyeri bazishyizeho yewe n'abana na madamu tujya kwa databukwe bari bafite imbaraga nyinshi abo bana rero bahamaze iminsi mike hanyuma musaza wa madamu se wabo ufindimwe na se n'abandi b'abavandimwe babo nibo bafashe iya mbere nta wundi wivanzemo babajyana muri Nyabarongo barabaheka baragenda babata muri Nyabarongo barangije barataha
muri jenoside 94 banyiciye imiryango yanjye mu bana 9 nabyaye hasigayemo twana tubiri
abana ba Mariya babiri n'umugabo wa Mariya abo bose badusanze kuri bariyeri twe turagera kubica
abagabo bacu babazamuye mu ngo bababwira ngo tugende tujye kwirinda ariko bo bazi ikigiye kuvamo bahera ku mugabo wanjye kuko bari kuri liste bahita bamutsinda aho ngaho haruguru y'urugo gato barabarashe babamurashe amasasu umwe aravuga ngo n'uyu sha mbaye hanuyu.
This genocide was long planned by the government of the time, who used education and the media to divide Rwandans, creating the conditions for the genocide to happen. The preparation of the genocide and of the 100 days of killings happened in full view of the world, who stood by, watched, and did nothing. No one came to Rwanda's rescue. The killings were only stopped when the Rwanda Patriotic Front overthrew the genocidal government. From that moment, Rwandans began the long, hard road to recovery, healing, and reconciliation.
Mu mwaka wa 2004 nibwo nafashe icyemezo cyo gusaba imbabazi Mariya. Mfati umwanzuro numvaga mvuga nti se wenda yaba ntari namusanzeyo kuko numvaga mfite ubwoba nkongera nkavuga nti se ubundi amaherezo yazaba yahe ngize amahirwe rero ubwo nuvuga ngo Mariya asanze ariyo nibwo rambwiye nti uko biri kose urabizi ngende mu bantu nyine bakwiciye ariko noneho ndagira ngo umpe imbabazi.
Byagiye bigenda gahoro uko dusabana uko duhura uko tuvugana uko twigishwa hace mu nyigisho nyinshi cyane ntabwo byari byoroshye.
Hari ahantu neza nemereye neza ko imbabazi yazimpaye narangiye ku isantere ahantu bambonye Mariya naramuhamagaye turasangira mbona arembeye turasangira muri njye uwo munsi numvise arimo nafunguwe numvise arimo mvuye muri gereza.
To heal the wounds of a nation where neighbors killed neighbors, and even some family members turned on each other, the new Rwanda had to find a way to deliver justice for the victims, which could manage the scale of the crimes, and could also heal the torn social fabric of our society. So, we turned to our history for the answer. We set up Gacaca tribunals, a traditional form of community justice where citizens elected inyangamugayo, men and women of integrity in their communities, who heard almost 2 million genocide cases. This not only ensured that justice was delivered, but also established the truth of the killings. Reconciliation could begin at last.
Gacaca zimaze kugeramo abaturage tugakorana bari abafunguye bakaza bagashinjanya kanaka uwe kanaka twajyanye mu gitero uwe kanaka twajyanye mu gitero ngo kuko abakoze jenoside ngo kuko bagaragaye
abenshi ro muri Gacaca byatumye bamenya uko ababo bishwe barihangana baravyakira bamenya naho bajugunye.
We asked that the genocide survivors make huge sacrifices, by putting aside their desire for retribution in favor of forgiveness and reconciliation. And we asked all Rwandans to leave the ethnic divisions in the past and embrace a future of Rwanda, where we are all Rwandan.
nabaga muri CNLD naje mfite ipeti rya General de Brigade. Kuyo dufata icyemezo tukava muri CNLD tukaza mu Rwanda nuko twari tumaze kumenya neza ko leta y'u Rwanda ifite gahunda nziza yo kunga abanyarwanda, ikangurira abanyarwanda aho bari hose batahuke mu mahoro, kandi waza ikakwakira neza nk'umunyarwanda, ugatura aho ushaka utuje utekanye nta kibazo gihari. Muri RDF igihe mazemo nabonye nta vangura ribamo, umuntu akora akazi ashinzwe nta kindi.
Rwanda is still a work in progress. It is up to the next generations to learn the true story of our past, to protect against genocide, denial, and hate, and keep the memory and the lessons of our history alive.
En fait, le négationnisme est en pleine expansion sur Internet, sur les réseaux sociaux, sur Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Le discours n'a pas changé. Certaines personnes vont par exemple prétendre que le génocide n'a pas été planifié, mais que les gens se sont mis en colère et ont commencé à tuer. Il faut qu'on soit plus nombreux à protéger la vérité, à protéger l'histoire du génocide contre les Tutsi sur ces plateformes-là.
We have made progress across every sector, creating a secure and ambitious country which offers opportunity and hope to all Rwandans.
byahindutse ni byinshi nyuma ya jenoside yakorewe abatutsi. Umwana ariko akabona buruse atitawe ngo n'uwo kwande.
Ndi umukobwa ukora mu bijyanye n'ubuvuzi ndetse nkaba ndi no muri siporo kandi byose nkambikora neza. Rero umwana w'umukobwa icyo bamubwira ni uko turashoboye muri rusange, ibyo twajyamo byose dushoboye kubikora neza, ndetse turanahagarariwe hirya no hino kugeza ku mudugudu, turahagarariwe n'ijwi ryacu rishobora kumvikana.
For our friends around the world, we thank you for continuing to stand with us and ask you to share Rwanda's story and what we've learned about division and reconciliation at a time when the world seems increasingly more fractured. Rwanda's experience is one of unimaginable loss, but it is also the story of a people determined, of resilience, of sacrifice, and of rebirth. Rwanda today is proof that out of the depths of despair can come great hope.
Okay, can you do next? So that's a story of reconciliation. It's mostly a story about how do you
This is Rwanda.
You can do next? Okay. It's a story of how do you reconcile. But let me quickly go through now the economy itself. Rwanda was labeled by UN by the most improved human nation in the whole world. Because of when we talked about it in 1995, 80% were under the line of poverty. We're living in extreme poverty. Now, 40%. Still have 40%, but the percentage, beyond the percentage, we have numbers. Millions of people were lifted out of poverty. And how do you do that? We do that. I mean, many people have admired it, have put factual check, international researchers about that confirms what happens, but you see that in people's lives. You see that in the movement of people from the poverty to the higher level. How do we do that? We do that by promoting women. After the genocide, 70% of Rwandans were women. Why were they women? Because in the genocide, we were obviously a patriarchal society. The killers, they men harm without, when they kill men, that's when they're trying to exterminate. So you end up with most of the people who are mostly, it's a single family led by women, but most by the survivors, but also by perpetrators, because most of perpetrators were also men. So either they were outside the country or they were in jail. So there is no way you can develop a country without involving women. So we particularly made a policy whereby, for example, in our constitution, 30% of all positions must be women. And we have to streamline those processes, even in the private sector. That has had a ripple effect Up to now, Rwanda, in the parliament, you have 60% who are women. So like they took their 30% and they took others because it created some sort of inspiration. In the banks, what is very good recently, like 10 years ago, we had 13 commercial banks in the country. Now, out of and none of the CEO of the banks were women. Now, last year, I think out of 13, 11 of them are led by women. They are CEO. This is an example of private sector. It's a kind of a ripple effect that is created by just giving place to women. So I put that photo of women because Rwanda is particularly well known for cleanliness. It's very clean and safe to see how women are participating in also that cleaning activities each and every day. But most importantly, it's because we had a vision. There's a vision called Vision 2020. We all sat together and made three choices. One is the choice to be united, obviously because of the issues we had. We abolished the Hutu, Tutsi, and Twa. We are now Rwandans. We don't talk about that. If you hear any Rwandan talking about that, there must still be a problem with him. We are all Rwandans. It's abolished through ID, and there is rules and laws actually to punish that. That's one. So that's a choice to be united. Number two choice is to think big. Think big. Though we are a country that has gone through a big problem, but we can think big and think about going to Saturday. That's why we came up with a vision called the Vision 2020. It had specific things to achieve, which we achieved was for 2020. And then number three choice is accountability. When you're trying to implement, you have to be held accountable. Now, Graham was talking about one thing we have, which is a national dialogue. That's at the end of the year. People from the diaspora go to Rwanda as well as Rwandans. I was saying that for us leaders, the dialogue time is a time for accountability. So you're out there, they're asking you what are the things you put in your KPI, how do you respond to that? Because accountability is part of the three choices. So Vision 2020 was based on different pillars. Number one is about good governance for wealth creation. We're talking about decentralization, involving the people in the government, in decision making, from budgeting to implementation, to accountability as well. There's something we got from history that is called imihigo. It's performance contract. In Rwanda, every household have a performance contract. It's like, we want you to move from here to here. You sign, deliver on consistently. And at the end of the year, you have them to say, oh, this is what I aim to achieve. This is what I have achieved. And the leader of a sector or leader or a district will compile all the performance contract. Now becomes his performance contract. All the way to ministers. I was a minister of transport. Obviously, I will take all performance contract with regard to transport and have it as well. It's a KPI, and I'm rated at the end of the year. And if I don't fulfill that, I can't continue to be a minister or I can't continue to be an ambassador. So that's how it works. But it goes down to the household. Some of the indication is about life expectancy. Recently, last year, the life expectancy has moved to now 69.9, almost 70. In 1995, it was 35. It's just life expectancy, I chose it because it gives you an indication of many things. We don't have much resources, but the idea of life expectancy to double means the healthcare system that works pretty well, means the socioeconomic policies that works pretty well, and means the education and all the things that gives people hope and have good health to move forward. So that's one. Two, Rwanda is the first nation to have achieved the universal access to education. Three, we have a universal healthcare. So all these decisions and implementation that were helped are enshrined into what we call thinking big, but that what helped to move the people out of poverty. Universal education, and there's a famous picture here because, for example, every university student must own a laptop. Is given a laptop by the government, but also the student in a primary school, there's a famous project which is one laptop per child. So everything we've done in the country, in terms of thinking big, technology has been key. Because one thing is clear: if you want to improve agriculture the same way Australia did, we're not going to find all the money to do irrigation. We're not going to find all the money to do mechanization. But you know what technology offers? What we call leapfrog. I'll give you an example. AI. If I want to train my teachers, we've changed from French to English. And if I want to train my teacher to change from French to English, it's going to take me ages. But with AI can produce a number of, can produce teaching teaching materials for the teachers. So it helps me to leapfrog the process that other people have done. So I'm using AI because it's quite current, and we are the first country that have issued AI as a policy. So we've used technology in the process every time. For that to happen, we have to have a critical mass of students from primary school having a laptop, having access to laptops, and then using the technology to provide those solutions. Then another important thing is that Rwanda is the second easiest place to do business in Africa. What we say, second easiest place to do business in Africa, 29th easiest place to do business. I know when doing business was still there, that's the only ranking where we were better than Australia back then, where we were 29. 29, when you talk about doing business, like how long it takes to register a company, how long it takes to get a construction permit, so we've consistently improved our doing business, because what we want a foreign direct investment to come in, create jobs, and help in uplifting people. And for that to happen, we have to consistently improve, make sure. In Rwanda, it takes 6 hours to register a company. In Rwanda, it takes just 1 week to get a construction permit. In Rwanda, we don't have capital control and all other things. So these are deliberate efforts that were made as a country to make sure we then put people out of poverty, because as you provide jobs and so on. Me as an ambassador, my number 1 KPI is on FDR, is on foreign direct investment. How many foreign direct investment from Australia to Rwanda? How many foreign direct investment from New Zealand to Rwanda? And this is part of my KPI. It's number 1 KPI. So in fact, I hope some of you will go on and invest in Rwanda after here. So I had prepared also a video, but I think I don't have much time. It also tell you about the Vision 2020 we had, and we've achieved 90% of what we have in Vision 2020, and how we went into people's mind, and they started to believe. We talked about despair. After the Vision 2020 achievement, Rwandans started to have hope. There was a ranking recently as well, done by the World Bank, about young people and how they perceive where their country is going. In many countries in Africa, of course, most of them don't think it's going in the right direction. Rwanda is the only country where 60% of the Rwandans, of the young people, think that Rwanda is going in the right direction, because we've achieved the vision, what we aimed at, Vision 2020. I'll give you an example. Electricity in 1995, or 20 years ago, was just 2%. 2% of the households had electricity in 1995. Now you guess the percentage, 70%. Me, I'm from the rural area. The story of Rwanda is also me. I was born in a household with no electricity, no pavement. I told you about going down into that. Think about me. When I will go to school, I'll come back. I don't do homework. I have to do homework at school, or I use the lamp we use with petrol. Think about me with now electricity in my household, and I can do homework like the people in the city. Well, that's back then. And I'll think about me now, an ambassador, that's big deal. Right? So that's where, so the story of Rwanda, the story of hope with Rwandans, is they have seen where you can come from and where you are now. It's a real story. It's beyond numbers. It's people's change. But this is just, I talked about electricity, but I can talk about water. But what I want to say here is that with the Rwandans, then they see hope. They see potential achievement. You move from despair and you go to hope. Can you do next? Because I think the video, I will share the presentation with many of you if you can have time for it. That was 2020. We've achieved 2020. But we have not yet stopped. We still have 40% of the people under the poverty. And we aim by 2050 to be an upper middle income economy. We still have boundless ambition. We don't want to start there. But these are just some of the indicators I've chosen. Second fastest growing economy, most improved nation in human development, young and growing economy, 70% of population, low risk. In Africa, you hear all the stories about debt trap. With people talk about different things. Rwanda is the most stable country. It has the best rating in terms of the ratings, and so on. So these are some of the indicators of what we do. Rwanda is the only country with 90% of the country covered by internet. So provide help for the infrastructure. People want to invest in ICT and so on. It is the first in government transparency in Africa. So the least corrupt country in Africa. One of the least corrupt countries across the world. Importantly, when I talk to Australians, it's very important to highlight this. 6th safest country in the whole world for solo travelers. So these are the ranking done by World Economic Forums. These are not ranking done by the government, so that can be checked. When someone says it's safe for a solo traveler, of course it's safe for groups and so on. We are fast growing, low risk, I've spoken about that. But also one other point I wanted to highlight is that need, is boundaries ambition, continuous to think big. Remember the choices I made, I said, think big accountability, think big. One other point, when I'm talking to Australians, I'm proud of, is about vaccine manufacturing. BioNTech set up the first factory outside Europe in Kigali. And for all of you, you understand the context of a company deciding to set up a vaccine, mRNA vaccine factory in Kigali recently. You must believe in the stability of the country. You must believe in the capacity of the country to produce the skills you need, and so on and others. So we're thinking big. We don't want to stand there. We want to develop a country to be an upper middle income country after that. But then, of course, another story is the story of Zipline. Zipline is a company that uses drones to transport blood. In fact, Zipline came to Rwanda when I was a minister. And I remember them, they're Americans, they're from California. When they came to Rwanda, they were like, oh, we have drones, but we can't be allowed to fly drones in California. But they came to Rwanda, they met our president. The president said, come to Rwanda, we can help you to try that. Right? They came to me, I was a minister of transport, but I'm in charge of aviation. I'm like, no way, hell no, you can't. There's no way you're gonna bring drones in the airspace that is shared with the things. No way. It's like, so I think then after that, there were a conversation, many people telling me, I said, no, ICAO is an institution that helps with regulating the aviation. Many of you know. They don't allow that. But I remember my president telling me, no, we don't need to necessarily, why can't we start something that other people haven't started? Maybe we learn in the process. Because it's not being done somewhere, it doesn't mean we can't do it. It's a different thinking. And I'm a graduate from Manchester, like blah, blah, blah. I say, oh no, I say, no, different thinking. Maybe we can try it and create those regulations. We are the first one to do that. Fast forward, Zipline startup was listed now in New York Stock Exchange. It's a $1 billion company. During COVID, California called them back to help them deliver medicines during COVID. That was started in Rwanda. So that's one example of boundaries, ambitions, and what we want to try and do. We also started a financial hub, which is Rwanda now is the safest country in Africa. It's very stable. What we want people to come and use Rwanda as their gateway towards Africa. And of course, when you're in Australia, you want to talk about a home of sports. There's no way you can talk to Australians without sports. Just example, we intentionally want to host sport. They are hosting Africa Cycling World Cup next year, 2025. We're the first country to host NBA Africa. NBA have started, that's a basketball league. I've started competition, and we're the first country to host it. And these are just some of the infrastructure out there. In terms of handling COVID, I felt I would get some indication where Australia think tank, which you all know, ranked it. Lowy Institute ranked Rwanda as the 6th in the world for pandemic preparedness in 2021. On that one, I think we're also better than Australia. There's some few things better than Australia. Very competitive. So the economy, so that's about COVID. And then this is our target for 2050. We want to become an upper middle income country and high income country by 2050. And we want to eliminate anything to do with poverty. And that you do that story of hope is important. I wanted to quickly talk about humanitarian peacekeeping. Because of what happened to us, we don't want that to happen to anyone else. So we develop need and forces to help other Africans. The story that is well known is when we host the Africans who are trying to go to Europe and they're trapped in Libya. And one New York Times reporter went there, published the story, and we decided to take the first step to host those Libyans, those Africans who are in Libya, So they process their claims and they can go back to third countries. Some of them came to Australia, others went to Europe and so on. But second, when Mozambique was attacked by terrorists, they went and called up Rwanda, and we went there to help with the military, with defense. And now the project has resumed. So we've helped. We've helped also Central Africa, and that is done. And I think it's important to understand that because they are now talk about the British or deal with the British, and people talk it on one side. But what you need to think about is that UK came to us because of our success with this. They saw how we helped people from Africa, from Libya, and we accepted them in Rwanda, and they end up going back to third countries and say, you can do it. They came to us because of that. Obviously, the people in the media won't do that. And why do we do that? Because every single Rwandan, almost 90% of us have been refugees. We understand what it means to be a refugee. We understand what it means to host someone who is in need. And we know that when you give them education, you give them good time, the level of productivity they have once they're better, it's high. So that's why we do that. So I wanted to end this. Next, can you help me with next? With, of course, I'm talking to Australian Institute of International Affairs. I talk about international relations. We are now part of Commonwealth. In fact, we are the chair of Commonwealth. So why did we go into Commonwealth? We were not colonized by UK. It was a deliberate decision that was taken to expand the horizon. The first word of English I was telling Paul, I spoke it in the university. And it was a goodbye. And I remember how I read it really bad, and I said goodbye, because I had done all my things were in French. And I was like, no, it's goodbye. I was like, oh my God, I'm not gonna be able to speak that thing. Why would you write goodbye and then you read goodbye? It doesn't make sense. So fast forward, that I went to study in Manchester, came back. I'm an ambassador now in Australia. I'm sure you're understanding what I'm talking about. So that's because of the discussion, the decision that was taken by leadership to join Commonwealth, to use English as a language of teaching. So we go through that and then hope for that. But we're still in Francophonie because our former foreign minister is Secretary General of Francophonie. So we speak French, English, and Kinyarwanda because we also want to be up. This is a photo of Deputy Prime Minister Honorable Richard Mars in Rwanda when we hosted Commonwealth, and we are leading now. And I also wanted to finish by Australia and Rwanda. We have a very good relationship. We've made progress. There's some of the things that were done in Australia. We spoke about the genocide. We spoke about the justice we offered to victims. But internationally, people who perpetrated the genocide, some of them, most of them who organized, they went away. They are in these different countries, including in Australia, some perpetrators. So Australia has perpetrators and genocide survivors. And we've always wanted that countries who have genocide perpetrators would try to at least try them, put them into the justice system. We're very happy that for the first time Australia have made steps. Number one, in a statement that Honorable Senator Penny Wong made, which recognizes the genocide and call it what it is, which is genocide against the Tutsi, but they also recognize the Rwanda recovery, which is a source of pride. Number two is steps they have taken to prosecute the potential perpetrators who are here. They are genocide perpetrators who are here, including here in the state of Queensland. But also that comes with genocide denial and so on. So we're very happy with the progress that was made, and it's good. It's a start of good relation we have with Australia. But again, it's not about just the genocide. It's also about investment. Australians now are the second to visit the gorillas, which is the most popular visit in Rwanda. After the Americans, Australians go to Rwanda to visit the gorillas. They are the second in numbers. Number two, we have a lot of investment from Australia. Rio Tinto now has invested in Rwanda and decided to make it a headquarter for Africa. We have, I think, the company led by Andrew Forrest, Andrew Fortescue as well has invested in Rwanda and trying to make it a headquarter for Africa. And we have a lot of other investment. We don't have much resources, but they come because they want to make it as a headquarter for Africa. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Your Excellency, for what was just a cracker of a contribution. And I know that everyone will be waiting to have a look at the presentation online when we circulate it, but I've got 15 minutes, so I'm going to shut up and introduce Dr. Kiriloy Ingram, who is our, and I would normally say a lot more about Kiri, but I wanted you to ask questions instead. She is a postdoctoral research fellow with the Australian Graduate School of Police and Security at Charles Sturt University. Bachelor of International Security Studies with first class honours from ANU, and her PhD from the University of Queensland is the topic was the Islamic State's gendered propaganda mobilising women and men from territorial control to insurgency. She is an AIIA Next Gen Scholar. She was recognised and appointed as a Pacific Forum Young Leader. There is no one who is better qualified in this audience to be asking questions on His Excellency than Kiri Ingram, and that's why we have her. And we also have her as a great demonstration of what talented young men can do, and that's why we support them. So, Kiri, I'll get you to take over.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you for your excellent presentation. I'm just going to ask one quick question, and it's my position as moderator to do that before I open it to the floor. This is a particular interest of mine, and you spoke about it in your talk. You know, often in conflicts throughout history, there tends to be this uncritical assumption that women are only victims, but the realities of conflict and genocide are far more complicated. As you pointed out, women are perpetrators. And I think that that fact underscores the importance of including women in the peace process. So not only is Rwanda a model of post-conflict recovery, but it's also celebrated for its gender parity in political institutions. So I was hoping you could expand on what that relationship is between female political representation and long-term peace and restorative justice.
I think it's a great relationship, and we've seen it as Rwandans itself. I think I explained how we, as a country, the leadership as a country, took a decision to include and involve more women. And what happens is even within the RPF itself, which was an army that stopped the genocide, you started to see, because the leader of RPF, you started to see within the RPF women. But remember, Rwanda is a patriarchal society. So that means to us, women don't go to fight, don't go to war, but you start to see in the cadres and in the military, the women within that. So, but when they came to Rwanda, when we started the post-genocide recovery, the idea is if you have 70% of women, some of them are from the families of perpetrators, some of others are from the families of their survivors, right? They're genocide survivors. You have to involve them. How do you do the post-recovery? One, it's also with the economic development. So supporting specifically women to create businesses, to grow up and make sure they take part. But two, which is important, is to make sure they are part of the decision making. They're part of the decision, they're part of the policy. And that's why in our constitution, they have 30% that must be taken by every woman. And the whole idea by women for every political institution, but the whole idea is to create people who are going to inspire others. And this is what happened. Like we all believe it. I mean, I remember, I think we never believed that, let's say, for example, some women can be doctors, some women can be engineers, civil engineers. But the moment you start to see your MP, your minister, being a woman, I mean, with the girls we go to school together, says, oh, I can do that. I can dream. You allow them to dream. So they started to dream. So in the process, then it helps with the reconciliation thing. When you're helping people to move from one side to the other. Because remember, one thing that helps people to kill is that you tell them, this is your enemy, and he's the source of all the problems. And that's why they dehumanize and so on. Once you're moving everyone together, and the women are taking the lead on that, that helps. But two, of course, I personally think they're better at forgiving. We have to, forgiveness was a key thing. You've seen about it in our country. The survivors had to forgive. You've seen it in the video. That's why I wanted it. That's the only thing they had. And I think to me, most of them got that courage to forgive. And when you get the chance to visit Rwanda, there are some areas where actually they forgave and their children ended up marrying each other. It's gone, it's 30 years after that. So women were the integral part of our successful reconciliation, but also the recovery journey because, of course, of that specific involvement in the socio-economic life. I mean, I spoke about political institutions, but remember the example I gave on the private sector as well. Now we have women leading banks. It was a no say back home. But they are the best now, the best, biggest bank that posts a profit every time it's got BK. The group CEO is a woman, and the bank CEO is a woman, and BK has been consistently performing well. It's on a stock exchange for the last 4 to 5 years. Now, what it tells you is, it tells you that to people, it tells people that you start believing in what they can do beyond just saying because a woman can't do that. So that really helpful in the coverage.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to open it up to the floor now, and I'll just ask if you ask one question at a time and keep it direct and succinct because we have guests online as well.
Yes, g'day, and thanks for the presentation. I'd start off by saying that I recognise the traditional owners of the land on which we're gathered, the Yaga and Turrbal people, and I just explained to the ambassador, it's a custom we have in Australia is to recognise the traditional owners of the land which are on. I recognise that Rwanda is a state party to the African Charter of Human and People's Rights, and also that the African Commission on Human and People's Rights has recognised the Twa as having indigenous status in Rwanda. Now, if I was to ask you, when you say that 69 is the average age of Rwandans, what's the average mortality rate for Twa? It may be 35, but you wouldn't be able to tell us. And many people here may not recognise that Twa or Batwa are the forest peoples, traditional owners of Rwanda, who are short-statured people. We would, in previous less educated times, call them pygmy people. We didn't see them in your presentation tonight. Many of them suffered in the violence of the genocide as well. I'm just wondering if it's illegal for a Twa person to call themselves Twa in Rwanda, if it's illegal for them to have a national association of Twa, how can they achieve self-governance? How can they achieve respect for their rights? And why is Rwanda, which is such an abuser of human rights, not complying with its commitments under the African Charter?
What's your name again?
Smith.
Smith.
And that's a question for the moderators. Are we going to pass the list of attendees to the government of Rwanda tonight, given they're responsible for so much transnational repression? I'd request that my details not be provided to the government of Rwanda, please, for my safety and the safety of everyone here.
So Smith, first of all, like I said, there's no more Twa.
You're walking around close to me, okay? Thanks.
Yeah, there's no more, I said it, there's no more.
Like Trump walking close to Hillary.
Yeah, there's no more Hutu, Twa, and Tutsis in Rwanda.
Well, not according to the African Commission.
I'm the High Commissioner of Rwanda, so I'm Rwandan, not any other things. We are Rwandans.
You're a state signatory to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights.
Can I respond?
I am conscious of time, I'm sorry.
Can I respond? Because he asked the question.
Certainly. Yeah.
First of all, we are all united. We are Rwandans. There's no Hutu Twa now. We've abolished that specifically because of the issues created on us. And
you've abolished it. He's answered the question. Huh? You asked the question.
They've signed the charter.
That is the courtesy we have here.
Yes. Second, in the socio-economic programs, we support different people. Because when you're growing the economy, you support whoever who has special needs. And specifically for people who have lived with, maybe with that kind of work, which is totally and so on, who have special needs and who have special programs for that. And there are specific programs for that, supporting them for education, supporting them for, but it's not supporting a specific group because of their race. It's supporting them because in the social economic safety nets, it's done. So that's how we do it. For us in Rwanda, we no longer want to be divided. They're all Rwandans, but now if you're talking about special social economic needs and uplifting, that's what we look at.
Thank you, Commissioner. Look, these forums are really important for establishing dialogue. So I'm going to keep on with another question from the audience before we move on to an online question. You had your hand up.
I mean,
sorry.
You guys want to go first? Sorry. Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to ask. It's usually in economic development we hear about centralized, strong governments, like in East Asian American countries. What what do you think has made Rwanda have good economic development with a decentralized government? Like,
because the decisions, I spoke about the decentralization.
Yeah.
The decisions are made by the people you want to serve. It helps you to understand exactly what you need, but it helps to involve them. So if you're together, you say at the rural area, you say maybe our next biggest priority is to come up with a road here. Maybe you might want to bring a road on that specific area, but that's not necessarily what is needed. What is needed maybe is irrigation. What is needed mostly is to improve education. So once you let people make a decision, not ever with our decentralization system, but also it is very clear that they have to participate in it. So it becomes easier. Say, for example, I'll give an example of because I was in transport. Once you agree that this is the most priority need, but when you're going to do a road, you have people living by roads which needs to be moved, it becomes easier to discuss with them because it's their need. They are supporting you. So that makes it faster. Decentralization increases ownership and makes it faster. And we've experienced it in Rwanda. We still want to continue to be based on decentralization.
And another question? Yeah. Sorry.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for the excellent presentation. It brings back so many memories. As Paul mentioned, I am from Bosnia and we were going through genocide around the same time that Rwanda was. And in fact, when we came to Australia, I have dear friends from Rwanda because we bonded over trauma. It is amazing to see the development past 1995 and what your country has achieved. Unfortunately, that is not the story of Bosnia. By far, it is not. It is not. We are not on the right track to, not even close to what you have done. What I'm interested in is how do you balance the need for people to remember history and understand what has happened to them, and not allow that to derail the progress you have made. I think there is something in the psyche of your people that you have managed to overcome not the trauma, but you have overcome the need for retribution. But you also have to, I think, in remembering history is really important so that it doesn't repeat. But how do you balance that with making sure that history doesn't repeat, remembering history while still having eye to the future and making sure you're focused on what your country can do?
It's how you organize the remembrance.
Yeah.
There's a theme of remembrance. Kwibuka is called remember, unite, renew. 3 words. Remember. Why do you have to remember? You have to remember because that's what defines you. You have to constantly reflect on what made me go there. The younger generation needs to know. Unite. The moment you've defined the remembrance, then people understand the idea of unity. We talk about unity. We talk about abolishing these use of Hutu, Tutsi, Tutsi. Then people understand, especially the young people. But then renew. When you've gone through the adversity, you've gone so down, you really don't want to go much more down. So it is used as a way to renew the commitment of the people to move forward, to never go. So in the messaging, in the setup, in what you do, it is not just heard about that story. It's about a story also about the unity which we need to continue and the renew. So it is that balance. Of course, there's still trauma. In the remembrance ceremonies, we still have people who have trauma now, and trauma is generational. Some people were born, 70% of Rwandans now are under 30. That means they have not seen the genocide. But you start to see some people who were not even there having trauma because trauma is generational. So you have to deal, of course, with trauma itself specifically, but it shouldn't stop you from remembering. You still remember, but the way you organize it and the theme around it and the conversation around it, everywhere you are, is what defines and makes the country move forward. That's what I would say.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. We're coming to the end, so I'm going to pass over to Graham for concluding remarks.
Or we can ask the question.
No, well, there's break time here. Once the clock goes, you've got to sit down.
Well, look, firstly, I'm sure that everyone found that presentation today absolutely riveting. We could continue on and on for hours, I'm sure, with many questions, and possibly after the formal session is ended, we can have some informal discussion. So I would like to move a vote of thanks to His Excellency for that wonderful presentation tonight. It was really very fascinating, and thank you to Kirali also for her role in moderating the questions there. The AAA, as you'd be aware, has a very busy schedule of fascinating events. This Thursday, we have the ambassador for the Netherlands, Her Excellency Adi Stoers-Braken, who'll be talking on middle powers in a contested space, the Netherlands and Australia as logical partners. On the 11th of June, we have Ukraine, Gaza and genocide before the International Court of Justice. A very topical discussion that will be by Professor Donald Rothwell, the Professor of International Law at the ANU. On the 9th of July, we have a talk on the 2024 Indian election and what it means for the Indo-Pacific by Professor Ian Hall from Griffith University. There are many other events on our website, and I would encourage you to look at our website and come along. So once again, I'd like to thank very much His Excellency for making time to talk to us tonight. That was an absolutely riveting discussion, most fascinating. Thank you very much.